You really thought you paid me to forget? The words cut through the champagne-soaked chatter of the grand ballroom like a knife. I watched Daniel Williams, my ex-husband, soon-to-be CEO, tonight's man of the hour, freeze mid-sentence in his engagement speech. His fiancée Victoria gripped the microphone stand. His mother's smile cracked like porcelain. And then they saw what was standing behind me. Who was standing behind me? 2 10-year-old girls in matching navy dresses, holding each of my hands, Lily and Grace. The daughters he paid me $10,000 a month to erase from existence. The daughters he doesn't even know survived. You know what they say about revenge? It's not always served cold. Sometimes revenge is served at room temperature in a Dior suit with twin daughters who have their father's eyes. My name is Amber Medina now. Though for 3 years I was Amber Williams, desperately trying to be the perfect wife to a man who measured my worth by whether my uterus could produce a male heir. This is the story of how I went from lying on a clinic table, being told to terminate my pregnancy of twin girls, to walking into my ex-husband's engagement party with those same daughters, funded entirely by his guilt money, and watching his carefully constructed empire crumble in real time. But before you hear about tonight's beautiful reckoning, I need you to understand something. If you've ever been told your body failed someone, if you've ever been valued only for what you could produce, if you've ever been threatened into silence while someone tried to erase your choices, this story is for you. Because I didn't just survive what Daniel Williams tried to do to me, I turned it into a decade-long chess game. And tonight, in front of his family, his board members, his society friends, and his pregnant fiancée, I'm delivering checkmate. Hit that like button if you believe some debts can never be paid off. And make sure you're subscribed, because this story has twists you won't see coming. But let me start from the beginning. Back when I was 26 and naive enough to believe that marrying into the Williams family was a dream come true. It was October 2010 when I met Daniel Williams at a corporate charity gala in Manhattan. I was working as an event coordinator for the hotel hosting the fundraiser. He was the golden boy heir to Williams Industries, third-generation wealth, custom suit, that effortless confidence that comes from never hearing the word no. He was everything I thought success looked like. Ivy League educated, already vice president of his family's manufacturing empire at 29. The kind of man who spoke 3 languages and summered in the Hamptons. Our first 2 years together felt like validation. Daniel was charming, attentive, always including me in his world. He'd introduce me to his business partners and say things like, "Amber's going to give me the most incredible children," or, "Can't wait to see her as a mother to my son." At the time, I thought it was romantic. I didn't hear the warning buried in those words. Son, singular, specific, non-negotiable. We got married at his family's estate in Connecticut. 200 guests, his grandmother's diamond tiara in my hair. I remember standing at that altar thinking I'd made it, that I'd been chosen, that my life was finally beginning. The problem started exactly 18 months after our wedding, the day I peed on that pregnancy test, and saw 2 pink lines appear. I was ecstatic. Daniel was ecstatic. His mother cried with joy. For 6 blissful weeks, I was the Williams' golden daughter-in-law, carrying the future of the dynasty. Then came the 20-week ultrasound. The technician smiled and said, "Congratulations, you're having twins." I squeezed Daniel's hand, overwhelmed with happiness. Then she added, "2 beautiful girls." I felt Daniel's hand go rigid in mine. I looked at his face. The joy had vanished, replaced by something I'd never seen before. Something cold, calculating. That night, he didn't touch me, didn't celebrate, just sat in his study drinking scotch until 2 a.m. while I lay in bed, confused and terrified. The next morning, he told me what he'd decided, and that's when my fairy tale turned into a nightmare I never saw coming. I can still remember the exact moment I ruined Daniel Williams's night, or so I thought. I was balancing 3 champagne flutes on a tray, weaving through Manhattan's elite at the Children's Hospital fundraiser when someone's designer handbag caught my hip. The tray tilted. The champagne didn't just spill, it launched. And it found its target with precision. A tall man in what I would later learn was a $3,000 Tom Ford suit. I froze, watching the golden liquid cascade down charcoal wool, my career flashing before my eyes. This was the kind of mistake that got event coordinators blacklisted in Manhattan. But Daniel Williams didn't yell. He didn't even frown. He looked down at his ruined suit, then up at my horrified face, And he laughed, actually laughed. "You know," he said, his eyes crinkling with genuine amusement, "most people are too intimidated to even approach me. I like that you just crashed into me instead." I stammered an apology, offering to pay for dry cleaning, already calculating how many paychecks that suit would cost me. He waved it off, introduced himself, and within 10 minutes had convinced me to let him take me to dinner after my shift ended. He waited 3 hours reading business reports in the lobby bar, just to take me to a 24-hour diner where we talked until sunrise. That was Daniel's superpower. He made you feel like you were the only person in the world who mattered. 3 months later, I learned that mattering to Daniel Williams came with conditions. Sunday dinner at the Williams estate wasn't dinner, it was an audition. The Connecticut mansion, the formal dining room with oil paintings of stern ancestors watching from gilded frames, his mother Margaret presiding over the table like a queen holding court. She was elegant, terrifying, with eyes that could appraise you down to your bone marrow. "Tell me about your family, dear," Margaret said, cutting into her fillet with surgical precision. "Your background." I explained my middle-class upbringing, my parents in New Jersey, my state school education. Each answer felt like I was losing points in some invisible scoring system. "And children?" Margaret asked, her fork pausing midair. "You want them, I assume?" "Of course," I said, glancing at Daniel, confused by the intensity of her stare. "I've always wanted to be a mother." "Good health? No family history of complications?" Daniel squeezed my hand under the table, a gesture I interpreted as support, rather than the warning it actually was. Later, as he drove me home, he was elated. "You passed," he said, kissing my hand. "My mother already loves you. She told me you're exactly what this family needs." I should have asked what the family needed. I should have questioned why his mother interviewed me like a potential broodmare. But I was 26 and in love, and Daniel Williams had chosen me. That felt like winning the lottery. 6 months later, he made it official. Daniel proposed at the same hotel where we'd met, transforming the grand ballroom into something out of a fairy tale. Rose petals everywhere, string quartet playing, all the event staff I'd worked with lined up to witness it. He got down on one knee in front of 200 people, holding his grandmother's 3-carat diamond ring, and spoke into a microphone so everyone could hear. "I've been looking for the woman who'll give me the family I've always dreamed of," he said, his voice carrying across the silent room. "Amber, you're that woman. Will you marry me?" The crowd held its breath, I held mine, and through my tears of joy, I said yes. Everyone applauded. His mother, watching from the VIP table, nodded with satisfaction. I slipped that ring onto my finger and felt like Cinderella at the ball. I didn't hear the transaction in his words. I didn't understand that when Daniel said, "the family I've always dreamed of," he meant something very specific, something non-negotiable. I thought he was choosing me. I didn't realize I was being recruited for a job I'd never be able to quit. I surprised Daniel with the pregnancy test at breakfast on a Tuesday morning in April. I'd wrapped it in tissue paper like a gift, my hands shaking as I slid it across our marble kitchen island. He stared at the 2 pink lines for 3 seconds before he exploded with joy. Literally picked me up and spun me around our kitchen, laughing, kissing my face, calling me brilliant and perfect, and everything he'd ever wanted. Before I'd even caught my breath, he was on the phone with his parents. "We're pregnant," he announced, his voice thick with emotion. "You're going to be grandparents." I heard his father's booming voice, through the speaker. "A grandson, finally, the Williams legacy continues." Something in my chest tightened. Not grandchild, grandson, singular, specific. But Daniel was kissing me again, talking about nurseries and prep schools and trust funds, and I told myself I was being paranoid. Of course his family was excited. Of course they had hopes. It didn't mean anything sinister. The next 6 weeks were bliss. Daniel was attentive, protective, treating me like I was made of glass. His mother called daily with advice. His father started talking about updating his will, about legacy, about the future of Williams Industries. I floated through it all on a cloud of hormones and happiness. Then came October 23rd, the 20-week ultrasound. I was nervous, but excited as the technician squirted cold gel on my growing belly. Daniel held my hand, both of us staring at the grainy, black and white monitor. And then we heard it. 2 distinct heartbeats, strong and steady. "Oh my goodness," the technician said, her face lighting up. Look at that, baby A and baby B. You're having twins. I burst into tears. Daniel's hand tightened around mine. I looked at him, saw his eyes were wet too, and felt so much love I thought I might burst. Let me get some better images here, the technician continued, moving the wand across my belly. And, okay, yes, I can see clearly now. Congratulations, Mom and Dad. 2 beautiful daughters, twin girls. The words hung in the air like a grenade with the pin pulled. I was still crying, but now with overwhelming joy. 2 babies, 2 daughters. I squeezed Daniel's hand, turned to share the moment with him. His face had drained of all color, not pale, gray. His eyes were fixed on the monitor like he was watching footage of a car accident. The hand holding mine went completely slack, limp, like he'd forgotten I existed. Daniel? I whispered. He didn't respond, just stared at those 2 tiny forms on the screen, and I watched something die behind his eyes. The technician printed our photos, made cheerful comments about double trouble and matching outfits. Daniel said nothing. He walked to the car like a man in a trance. The entire 30-minute drive home, he didn't speak, didn't turn on the radio, didn't look at me, just silence. Heavy, suffocating, terrifying silence. I kept looking at the ultrasound photos, at our 2 perfect daughters, trying to understand what had just broken between us. At 2 a.m, Daniel finally came to bed. I'd been lying awake for hours, my mind racing, my hands on my belly, where our girls were sleeping. Should we talk about names? I asked softly. I was thinking maybe. We need to talk about options, he said. His voice was flat, emotionless. Options? I sat up confused. You mean like finding a specialist? To check if maybe one could still be a boy? I read that sometimes. No, Amber. He turned to face me, and his eyes were cold. Stranger's eyes. I mean options about continuing with this pregnancy. The room temperature dropped 30 degrees. My blood turned to ice. What did you just say? You heard me, Daniel said. We need to discuss our options. Daniel called a family meeting for that Sunday. He told me we needed to discuss the pregnancy with everyone. I thought maybe they'd come around, that seeing my excitement would remind them this was still a blessing. Twin granddaughters. What was so terrible about that? I was so naive it physically hurts to remember. We sat in the Williams' formal living room, Daniel, his parents, and me. Margaret served tea like we were discussing vacation plans. His father, Richard, cleared his throat and got straight to business. Daughters can't run Williams Industries, he said, his tone matter-of-fact, like he was explaining why water is wet. This isn't personal, Amber. It's business. The company has been passed from father to son for 3 generations. We need a male heir. I looked at Daniel, waiting for him to defend me, to defend our daughters. He stared at his shoes. You're young, Margaret added, her voice almost kind, which made it worse. You can try again, get this complication handled, and we'll support you through the next pregnancy. We'll make sure you have the best care, the best doctors, but this, she gestured vaguely at my belly, this doesn't work for the family. Complication, she called my daughters a complication. They're not complications, I whispered. They're your granddaughters. Richard stood up. This discussion is over. Daniel will explain the next steps. The next morning, Daniel slid a manila folder across our kitchen island while I was eating breakfast. Inside were glossy brochures for a private clinic in Westchester, pamphlets with clinical language about late-term procedures and discreet services. There were forms with my name already filled in. An appointment card for the following Tuesday. It's all arranged, Daniel said, sipping his coffee like we were discussing a dentist appointment. They're expecting you at 9 a.m. I'll drive you there myself. The procedure takes about 4 hours. You'll need to stay overnight for observation, but you'll be home by Wednesday. I stared at the papers, at the sterile descriptions of how they would end my 22-week pregnancy. End my daughters. I felt them moving inside me at that exact moment, little flutters against my ribs, and I thought I might vomit. No, I said. Daniel set down his coffee cup carefully. Amber, no, I'm not doing this. These are our children, Daniel, our daughters. I'm not. You don't have a choice. The words hung between us like a slap. I looked up at my husband, and for the first time, I saw him clearly. The man I'd married didn't exist, had never existed. I do have a choice, I said, my voice shaking. And my choice is no. Daniel stood slowly, deliberately. He walked around the island until he was standing over me. And when he spoke, his voice was ice. Listen carefully, he said. If you don't do this, I will divorce you, and you will get nothing. Not the house, not the cars, not a single dollar. I'll tell everyone you were mentally unstable, that you tried to trap me with this pregnancy, that you're an unfit mother. My family has lawyers who will bury you so deep you'll never see daylight. We'll destroy your reputation, your career, your entire life. You'll lose everything. He leaned closer, his face inches from mine. Do you understand me? You will do this, or I will destroy you. I looked into his eyes and saw the truth. He meant every single word. This wasn't a threat. It was a promise. I was 6 months pregnant, sitting in my kitchen, and I finally understood. I'd married a monster. I locked myself in our master bathroom and slid down the marble wall until I was sitting on the cold floor, my arms wrapped around my belly, protecting my daughters from the man on the other side of that door. I needed help. I needed someone who would believe me, who wouldn't tell me I was overreacting or that Daniel meant well. There was only one person who'd ever seen through him, my sister Elena. We hadn't spoken in 2 years, not since she'd told me marrying Daniel was a mistake, that the Williams family would eat me alive. I'd called her jealous, bitter, said terrible things I couldn't take back. I'd chosen Daniel over her. Now I was calling her, sobbing so hard I could barely breathe, and she answered on the first ring like she'd been waiting. He wants me to kill my babies, I choked out. Elena, he's going to destroy me if I don't. Where are you right now? Her voice was steady, certain, no I told you so, no hesitation. Home. Locked in the bathroom. The appointment is Tuesday. I don't know what to... Listen to me very carefully, Elena said. Pack a bag. Tonight, after he falls asleep. Just essentials, documents, some clothes, your laptop. Hide it in your car. Tell him nothing. On Tuesday, I'll be there. Do you understand? I can't just... Yes, you can. I'm coming to get you, Amber. You and your daughters are going to be safe. I promise. The next 3 days were the performance of my life. I told Daniel I'd go through with it. Apologized for being difficult. Let him hold me while I pretended to cry about our loss to come. He kissed my forehead and told me I was being brave, making the right choice for our future. I wanted to scratch his eyes out. Tuesday morning, he drove me to the clinic, his hand on my thigh like a jailer escorting a prisoner. Elena was already in the parking lot in a rental car, texting me updates. Daniel walked me to the reception desk, signed paperwork, then settled into the waiting room with his phone and a coffee. Mrs. Williams? A nurse called my name. I stood, my legs shaking. Daniel looked up, gave me an encouraging nod. I followed the nurse through the double doors, down a hallway, and the moment we turned a corner, Elena emerged from a bathroom in scrubs she'd somehow acquired. Side exit is through the staff break room, she whispered. Move fast. We'd already staged everything, photos of me in a hospital gown that Elena had taken the night before at her friend's medical office, discharge papers her paralegal roommate had mocked up. The whole elaborate deception ready to go. 5 minutes later, I was in Elena's car, speeding away while Daniel sat in that waiting room, believing his problem was being solved. That evening, I called him from Elena's apartment in Brooklyn, my voice deliberately hollow, broken. It's done, I said, each word like swallowing glass. They're gone. I need time alone to process this, to grieve. The relief in his voice was audible, obscene. You did the right thing, Amber. This is better for everyone. Take all the time you need. I'll handle things here. We can try again in 6 months, for a son this time. I hung up and placed both hands on my belly, where Lily and Grace were moving, alive, safe. He thinks you're dead, I whispered to them. Let's keep it that way. Elena didn't just save me, she armed me. You need documentation, she said the first night I stayed at her apartment, while I was still shaking from what I'd done. Everything, every text, every voicemail, every conversation you can remember. Write it all down while it's fresh. She was a paralegal at a corporate law firm, and she approached my nightmare like a case she was building, which I suppose she was. We went through my phone first. Daniel's texts were damning in their casual cruelty. Get rid of them. Daughters are useless to me. Just handle it and we'll move forward. We screenshotted everything, backed it up in 3 different cloud accounts. Elena had me write detailed accounts of every conversation, the family meeting, the clinic brochure, Daniel's threats in our kitchen. I documented dates, times, exact words where I could remember them. Margaret calling my daughters complications. Richard saying daughters couldn't run the company. Daniel's promise to destroy me if I didn't comply. "This is your insurance policy," Elena said, watching me type through tears. "He thinks he has all the power because he has money and lawyers. But you have something better. You have the truth, and now you have proof." I went into hiding, changed my phone number. Elena helped me file for divorce through a lawyer in another state, citing irreconcilable differences, asking for nothing. Daniel signed the papers within a week, probably relieved I wasn't demanding money or making accusations. He thought I was broken, grieving, grateful to escape with my life. He had no idea I was 6 months pregnant and planning his reckoning. In March, 3 states away, in a small Pennsylvania hospital, I gave birth to Lily and Grace. 6 pounds each, healthy, perfect, screaming their arrival into the world with furious determination. The nurse placed them both on my chest, and I sobbed so hard I could barely breathe. They had Daniel's eyes, dark, intense, unmistakable. The Williams family chin, even hours old, I could see him in their faces. And instead of fear, I felt something sharp and certain crystallize inside me. He would never take them from me. I would make absolutely sure of it. 2 weeks later, Elena drove me to a bank in Philadelphia. I rented a secure safety deposit box under my maiden name, Amber Medina, the person I'd been before Daniel Williams tried to erase her. Inside that box, I placed everything. Birth certificates listing no father, medical records documenting my full-term twin pregnancy, DNA samples carefully preserved, recordings of voicemails, printed texts, my handwritten accounts of everything Daniel had said and done. Photographs of the clinic brochure with my name on the appointment card, the discharge papers we'd faked, alongside real hospital records proving I'd never been there. Elena photographed every item as we placed it in the box, creating a digital backup. "When you're ready," she said, snapping photos of the birth certificates, "you'll have enough to bury him. You could ruin his reputation, his business relationships, everything. But until then," she looked at me seriously, "you have leverage, real leverage. He paid you to terminate. You didn't. He thinks those girls are dead, but they're alive. They're his biological children, and you have proof of everything he did." I closed the safety deposit box and pocketed the key. "I'm not ready yet," I said, thinking of my 2-week-old daughters sleeping in their car seats. "But I will be. 10 years, I thought. 10 years of his guilt money, letting him think he'd won. And then I'd show him what losing actually looked like." 8 months after the procedure, I came home. I'd lost weight deliberately, stopped sleeping regularly, so I'd look haunted and hollow. I wore clothes that hung loose on my frame. I was playing a role, the traumatized wife, broken by what we'd done. Daniel barely looked at me when I walked through the door of what used to be our home. He was in his study, reviewing contracts, and I stood in the doorway waiting for him to acknowledge my existence. "You're back," he said finally, not looking up from his papers. "I'm back." "Did you—" He paused, pen hovering over a document. "Did you give them away like you said? The adoption?" I'd told him over the phone months ago that I'd gone through with the pregnancy in secret, given birth, handed the babies to strangers, that I couldn't look at them, couldn't bear it after what we'd done. Another lie in a web of lies. "Yes," I said, my voice hollow. "I couldn't look at them, not after everything." He nodded, seeming satisfied, relieved even, then went back to his contracts like I was a problem that had finally been solved. 2 weeks later, I requested a private dinner. Just the 2 of us at an expensive restaurant downtown, the kind of place with private booths and discreet waitstaff. Daniel agreed, probably expecting me to ask for a divorce settlement. Maybe some money to go away quietly. He was half right about the money. We ordered, made small talk. I watched him relax, watched him think he was in control of this conversation. Then I slid my phone across the white tablecloth and pressed play. His voice filled the space between us. "Listen carefully. If you don't do this, I will divorce you, and you will get nothing. I'll tell everyone you were mentally unstable, that you tried to trap me. that you're an unfit mother. My family has lawyers that will destroy you." Daniel's face drained of color. His hand froze halfway to his wine glass. I swiped to the next recording. His father. "Daughters can't run Williams Industries. Get this complication handled." His mother. "You can try again for a son." Then I showed him screenshots of his texts. "Get rid of them. Daughters are useless to me." I laid out photos of the clinic brochure with my name on it, the appointment he'd scheduled without my consent. "Where did you—" he started. "I documented everything," I said calmly. "Every conversation, every threat, every text message. I have recordings, photos, witness statements. I have enough evidence to destroy you, Daniel. Your board would be fascinated to learn what you did. So would the press. So would your precious shareholders." His hands were shaking. With rage or fear, I couldn't tell. Maybe both. "What do you want?" he finally managed. I leaned forward, my voice ice cold and perfectly steady. $10,000 every month, transferred to an account in my name. You'll tell no one about these payments. In exchange, none of this becomes public. Your board never finds out what you tried to force me to do. Your family never knows. Your reputation stays intact. You get to keep playing the golden boy heir." "You're blackmailing me," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "No, Daniel. I'm making you pay child support for the daughters you tried to murder. The daughters who are alive, healthy, and growing up beautifully. The daughters you'll never meet." His face went from white to gray. You didn't—" "Every month," I repeated. $10,000, or everyone finds out exactly what kind of monster you really are." He had no choice. We both knew it. 1 year after our arrangement began, I filed for divorce. Clean, simple, citing irreconcilable differences. I took a modest settlement, enough that it wouldn't raise eyebrows, not enough that anyone would think I'd won anything. Daniel's lawyers handled everything efficiently, professionally. His family was relieved. They'd never wanted me anyway, and now I was finally gone. But every month, like clockwork, $10,000 appeared in my account. The payments never stopped, never late, never missed. For 10 years, Daniel Williams paid for the daughters he thought were dead, funding the lives he'd tried to erase. I enrolled Lily and Grace in an excellent private school in Connecticut, under my maiden name, Medina, not Williams. I told the administration their father wasn't in the picture, and no one asked questions. Single mothers weren't unusual, even at expensive schools. I used Daniel's guilt money to go back to school myself, earning a business degree online while the girls were young. Started a small consulting firm, helping nonprofits with fundraising and event planning. Ironic, given how I'd met their father. The business grew steadily, but I never touched that income for our daily expenses. That was mine, earned clean. Every dollar from Daniel went into the girls' futures. Private school tuition, violin lessons. Lily showed incredible talent. Grace's passion for art classes, summer camps in the Berkshires, college savings accounts that grew fatter every year, dance recitals, field trips, braces, tutors, everything they needed, everything they deserved. I watched them grow knowing their father was funding every moment of their beautiful lives and didn't even know they existed. When they were 7, the questions started. They'd noticed other kids had fathers, had families with 2 parents. Grace asked first, her little face serious at the breakfast table. "Mama, why don't we have a daddy?" Lily looked up from her cereal, waiting. They'd clearly discussed this between themselves before gathering the courage to ask me. I'd prepared for this moment, rehearsed it in my mind 1,000 times. I knelt down so I was at their eye level. "Your father wasn't ready to be a dad when you were born," I said carefully, truthfully. "He made a choice to not be in your lives. It wasn't about you. You two are perfect and wonderful and brilliant. It was about him not being brave enough, not being ready for the responsibility of having children." "Does he know about us?" Lily asked. Always the more analytical one. "He knows you existed," I said. "Another truth, if not the whole truth. But he chose not to be your father, and that was his loss, not yours." "Do you miss him?" Grace asked, reaching for my hand. "No, baby, not even a little bit. Because I have you too, and you're everything I could ever want." They seemed satisfied with that answer, for now. I knew the questions would get harder as they got older, more specific, more demanding of the full truth. But I wasn't ready to tell them yet. Wasn't ready to explain that their father had tried to kill them before they were born, that he'd threatened and coerced and paid me off to keep his secret. I was waiting for the right moment. And that moment, I decided, would be when they were old enough to understand, old enough to help me deliver justice. When they were 10 years old, on the night of Daniel's engagement party. The Instagram post appeared on a Tuesday morning while I was drinking coffee and reviewing the girls' homework. A former colleague from my event planning days had tagged me in the comments, probably not thinking, probably just excited about Manhattan society gossip. Daniel Williams, newly appointed CEO of Williams Industries, announces his engagement to Victoria Ashford, daughter of Ashford Holdings. The photo was professionally shot. Daniel in a tuxedo, Victoria in an emerald gown that probably cost more than most people's cars. They were on a yacht, champagne glasses raised, his arm around her waist. She was 28, blonde, polished. She looked happy, the comments flooded in by the hundreds. Perfect couple. The Williams-Ashford Empire. Can't wait for the wedding. And then I saw Daniel's own comment pinned at the top. Finally ready to build the family I've always dreamed of. New chapter, new beginning. My hand shook so hard I nearly dropped my phone. Finally ready. Like the past had never happened. Like I'd never existed. Like Lily and Grace had never existed. I screenshotted everything. 2 days later, my former mutual friend called with gossip she was dying to share. The engagement party was going to be massive. The grand ballroom, 300 guests, black tie affair. Daniel was using it as a dual celebration, announcing his CEO position and his upcoming marriage. Apparently, he'd been telling everyone this was his fresh start, that he was finally ready to become a father. Can you believe it? She gushed. 10 years after his first marriage, and he's finally getting his happy ending. I thanked her for the information and hung up, finally ready to become a father. The words echoed in my head for hours, days. He'd spent 10 years paying me to keep silent about the daughters he'd tried to murder, and now he was going to stand in front of 300 people and pretend he was starting fresh. Clean slate, no ghosts, no consequences. My decision crystallized instantly, sharp and certain as broken glass. That evening, I sat Lily and Grace down at our kitchen table. They were 10 now, old enough to understand, old enough to choose. I need to tell you the truth about your father, I said. I explained everything, age-appropriately but honestly. How Daniel and I met, how excited he'd been about the pregnancy until he learned they were girls, how his family said daughters couldn't run their business, how he'd scheduled an appointment to end my pregnancy, how he'd threatened to destroy me if I didn't comply. The girls sat in stunned silence, holding hands across the table like they'd done since they were toddlers. I lied to him, I continued. I pretended to go through with it. I let him think you died. And for 10 years, he's been paying me money to keep quiet about what he did. Does he know we exist? Grace asked, her voice small and tight. I shook my head. He thinks you never were born. He thinks I gave you up for adoption at best. But he's about to, Lily said. It wasn't a question. My analytical daughter had already figured out where this was going. There's a party, I said, a big celebration. He's going to announce he's ready to be a father, ready to start a family. What are we going to do? Grace asked. I looked at my daughters, beautiful, brilliant, alive despite everything their father had tried to do. I smiled. We're going to a party. I walked through the grand ballroom doors at exactly 8:30 p.m., my daughters on each side of me. Lily held my left hand, Grace my right. We were dressed deliberately, me in a tailored black Dior suit, them in matching navy dresses that made their dark eyes stand out even more. The room fell silent in waves, starting from the entrance and rippling forward like a stone dropped in still water. Daniel was mid-speech, standing at the podium with Victoria beside him, talking about family values and building a legacy and the future of Williams Industries. His voice died mid-sentence. He stared at me like I was a ghost he'd tried to bury. Victoria followed his gaze, confused. His mother Margaret looked up from her champagne. I watched her face drain of color. Then everyone saw them, Lily and Grace, unmistakably Williams' features. Daniel's dark eyes, his strong jawline, the distinctive Williams chin that appeared in every family portrait lining the mansion halls. I walked to the front of the room, my heels clicking on marble. 300 guests parted like the Red Sea. The microphone was still on. Perfect. Daniel, I said, my voice carrying across the silent ballroom, I'd like you to meet Lily and Grace, your daughters, the twins you demanded I abort 10 years ago because they weren't sons, the twins you've been paying me $10,000 a month to keep secret. Victoria's hand flew to her mouth. Someone dropped a glass, it shattered. Every deposit was an admission of guilt, I continued, and I've kept every record, every text, every recording, every bank transfer, 10 years of evidence that you tried to force me to terminate my pregnancy because your family needed a male heir. The room erupted. Board members surged forward. Margaret Williams swayed and someone caught her before she hit the floor. Victoria was backing away from Daniel, her face twisted in horror. Daniel opened his mouth but no sound came out. His father Richard pushed through the crowd, his face purple with rage. Is this true? I handed him a folder I'd been carrying. Inside, 10 years of bank statements, showing monthly payments, birth certificates with DNA results attached, medical records, screenshots of texts, transcripts of recordings. Your son tried to force me to terminate my pregnancy because they weren't male heirs, I said clearly. He threatened to destroy me if I didn't comply. So I let him think I did it. I took his money and raised his daughters anyway. He's been funding their entire lives without knowing they exist. Richard opened the folder, read the first page. His hands started shaking. I took my daughter's hands. Come on, girls, we're done here. As we walked toward the exit, Lily looked back at Daniel, still frozen at the podium, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. You know, she said, her voice clear and strong, our mom told us you didn't want to be our dad. She was right, Grace added. We're glad. We don't want you either. We walked out of the grand ballroom, leaving Daniel Williams standing in the ruins of his reputation, his engagement, his CEO announcement, and his carefully constructed lies. Outside, the cool night air hit my face. I knelt down to my daughters on the sidewalk. You two okay? They nodded, brave and certain. Mom, Lily asked, what happens now? I smiled, really smiled, for the first time in 10 years. Now we go home and live our lives, the life we built, the life he paid for but never got to be part of. That's the best revenge of all. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.